Welcome back to Iron Rage, brought to you by SciTech Nutrition. Visit scitechnutrition.com. Make sure to follow us on our RX Muscle Iron Road to the Olympia, which will be taking place for the next 5 weeks leading up to Olympia weekend. I'm your host, Dave Palumbo, and I'm here with the Rager of Rages himself, John Romano from Guadalajara, Mexico.
For now, I'm going to take a trip to the States soon.
I know. Well, before we get to our topic tonight, our raging topic tonight, which is going to be cruising, I call it, let's go. There's a lunatic, John, in New York City climbing Trump Tower there. And I've been watching him. It's on Facebook Live. He's not very good at it, I'll tell you that much. He's not, like, I like to see the guys that climb fast. He's way too conservative. He's got these suction cups. He moves like a half an inch every hour. It's taking him forever to climb this building. What's wrong with people? The people out of their freaking minds.
When we were kids, a guy climbed the World Trade Center, one of the towers of the World Trade Center.
I remember.
He custom made these little aluminum chocks that fit in the guide for the window washing thing.
That was more impressive.
He went right up. He was up in 45 minutes. This knucklehead has been on the side of the building for 2 hours, and he's on the 15th floor. He's got
too much equipment.
50-something more floors to go.
Yeah, he's got too much equipment, John. If you have that much fucking equipment, it's not that impressive. I got news for you.
But the thing is, but look, that's my sport, so I can tell you, the suction cup thing is completely stupid. But it's a glass building. You don't really have any choice unless he could have gotten that notch. I don't know how their window washing thing works. I'm sure he scoped it out.
Yeah, but he's gotta bang on the.
What he's got to do is what he's doing is called aid climbing, and those straps that you see are called aiders. Now, normally when you're climbing a rock, you got one. You only need one of those because it's like a loop, and they got footholes in them. So what you do is you bang in a piece of protection, and then you clip that thing up there, and you step up into it.
Right.
Then you put another one in, and then you clip into that, and you step up into that, and you're kind of like moving it like this as you go up. This guy has got to put a suction cup. He can't use off of one. He's got to put a suction cup on there, pump it up, which takes, as you can see, forever. Then he's got to transfer one leg on one strap onto there. Then he's got to do the exact same thing on the other side because you can't use the same one. So he's going to be midnight before he gets to the top. And then, I don't know why the cops didn't just call, or the fire department didn't just come and just freaking hose him off. He would have fallen right off.
They should have. Will he get arrested, you think, when he gets up there to the top?
Are you kidding? The cops already cut a hole in the freaking building to try to haul him in, and he went around it. They took the window out. They got a mattress at the bag at the bottom in case he falls. There's about 500 cops there. Meanwhile, the bank's getting robbed around the corner because that's what the diversion.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they used to call me Cro-Magnon. I can climb the building too. People are just lunatics. Let's get to the topic today because I get all these emails, John, on a regular basis from people, and they're always asking me, because the most commonly asked question I get is PCT, post-cycle therapy. What do I take? People are obsessed with it because they're so desperately afraid to go off an anabolic steroid cycle that they want to know every nuance of what they should take and do when they come off. And so I always said this over the last couple of years. That's the most commonly asked question I get. The new thing I'm asked constantly is because someone's been putting it out there. You don't need to go off. You don't need to go off cycle. Just cruise or bridge. Or, cruising meaning taking, just stay on 200 milligrams of testosterone a week. Or
bridge. Like a low dose.
Yeah, or bridge the cycle with just taking, if you normally take 1 million grams of testosterone a week, just go off that and take Anavar when you're off instead, because it's not the same thing. Which is ridiculous, because going off is going off. I'm so sick of hearing about this cruising and bridging. Look, guys, you're not going to lose all your muscle if you go off steroids, if you train right, and you eat right, and you sleep enough. The problem is that no one does any of that, and they rely exclusively on the drugs, and that's why they're afraid to go off, because they know there's no solid basis of what they're doing, okay? If you look at the best bodybuilders in the world, the guys that train hard, they don't lose their muscle when they go off, because that's hard-earned. To ask a guy like me how long it took us to starve the muscle off our body, because our bodies just don't want to let go of it. And I still train hard, even though I have bad joints and everything like that. Are you just tired of hearing about this, John? I'm sure you hear it all the time too.
I get the same bullshit all the time. I mean, this is the routine. I love this. This just proves how fucking stupid most people are. Okay, I get an email. I've been on. I need to start PCT. What do you recommend for PCT? And I said, well, how much do you recommend you're going to pay me for that? Because I'm sick of answering these fucking questions for free, because the same retards ask the same questions over and over again. So from now on, you got to pay. Yeah. Okay. Second thing is. The first thing I ask them is, let me see your blood work. Oh, I don't have any blood work.
Right.
What do you mean you don't have any blood work? How the hell are you supposed to know if you need PCT if you don't have any blood work to see what your levels are? I mean, well, I was doing 200 milligrams of DECA, every other week. Do I need PCT? Probably not, but let me see some blood work.
Here's a better one. How about the better one is I don't feel right. I have no sex drive, or I'm not growing, or I have no pump in the gym. And I'm like, did you test the stuff you're taking to see if it's real? No. And I'll get the same question from the same person week after week after week. I'm like, did you buy the Roid test from DavePalumbo.com where you can test your drugs to see if they're real? No, not yet. So you've gone 6 weeks. We've had the same conversation. You've made no improvements, and you're probably taking fake gear, and you're too stupid or too lazy to go buy the test for $25 and see if what you're taking is actually good. People do stupid stuff, John. It irks me.
It's so annoying that they will tell you, well, I read on the internet. Or I read on one of the boards.
Right.
I mean, as soon as you tell me that, I automatically subtract 50 from your IQ. That's the first thing I do. Now I know I'm dealing with an idiot. Okay? So I don't care what you read on the internet. You have no idea whether or not it's true. Just because the guy's got a cool name and a lot of rep points does not mean he's qualified. So that's your first mistake. Like you just said, whether the gear or not is real. But it's like there's no look. Back in the day when you just said the old school athletes, they used to go on gear 8 weeks, 10 weeks before a show and kind of come up into the show. And then after the show, they get off gear. They didn't spend their off season jacked. They did it just before, contest time back in the day. Now, like you said, they're on all the time. They're on all the time. They don't have their blood work. We have no idea what's going on in their bodies with the other ancillary processes that are affected by, super pharmacological doses of testosterone and ancillary drugs. So who knows what's going on in there? There's a ticking time bomb. And then they decide, well, I just won't go off at all. Let's just cruise, because they think that maybe it's going to be the same process to get, to come back after post-cycle therapy after 6 months or 6 years. But how the hell do they know?
Well, whenever I hear the word, when I decided the topic of the show was going to be cruising, I was thinking, remember the old Tom Cruise movie, Cruising?
Yes.
It was like 1980 something. Here's the science of what's going on, guys. Listen up, because this is what you really want to pay attention to.
Yes. Listen to the science.
Why do you think it is that a woman, okay, when they take 5 milligrams of Anavar, puts on so much muscle? But yet if a man took 5 milligrams of Anavar, they wouldn't put that much muscle on. That is the question you need to understand and think about. And when you think about it, you understand that women don't produce testosterone in their body. They produce very low amounts of what's called DHEA, or dihydroepiandrosterone. It's an adrenal androgen. It's produced by the adrenal glands, which sit on top of the kidneys, and it's an androgenic hormone, very, very small amounts, and some percentage of that will convert to testosterone inside their muscle cells. And that's what their bodies can respond to, minute amounts, okay? Which means their androgen receptors inside their cells, and androgen receptors are not like insulin receptors. They're not found on the outside of the cell. They're found on the inside of the cell, in the nucleus of the cell. Those androgen receptors have to be super, super sensitive to pick up these very small, minute amounts of androgen in their body, and so they can respond and build muscle. When a woman takes a male hormone or a synthetic male hormone, even the weakest possible one out there, like Anavar, it's so much more than their body already produces that it creates this tremendous anabolic drive in their body, and that's why they put muscle on so easily. If a woman were to take testosterone, which some crazy, nutty, kooky women out there do, okay, they put on ridiculous amounts of muscle. But the longer they're on it, what happens is that receptor sensitivity decreases, and eventually it stops. They become like men, essentially, and they don't have that tremendously sensitive androgen receptor anymore. Well, men have a similar phenomenon that happens to them when they're taking anabolic steroids. They have a certain degree of sensitivity to those androgen receptors. Now you put anabolic steroids into the mix, and their bodies respond really well. And this is one of the reasons why I tell guys, when you're doing your first couple cycles, you don't need to take anything strong because your androgen receptors are so sensitive. After a while, the longer you stay on these anabolics, these receptor sensitivities decrease. The longer you're on, the less they respond. So one of the reasons that you want to come off drugs, okay, completely, no cruising, no bridging, one of the reasons you want to come off completely is to reset or resensitize these androgen receptors. It's the only way to do it. If you do not come off, they will not reset themselves. If you go to if you take like 200 milligrams of testosterone a week thinking, well, it's low dose, your androgen receptors will not resensitize themselves. The best thing you can do, and the reason why guys like Lavroni would respond so well when he would come back before a show is because he would be, not only would he not train, he wouldn't take any anabolics for 6 months at a time. When he started taking them again, his body just exploded with the results. Now, he also was a hyper responder, meaning that he responded better than most people, but one of the reasons why he did respond that well was because he was clean, okay? That's what you want to create in your body. Now, I'm not telling you to go off for 6 months out of the year. I'm telling you need to go off for 8 to 10 weeks out of every year to reset those androgen receptors. The 1 year that I competed that I didn't do it in 1997, I didn't go off because I had a lot of guest posings. My body was big, but it looked tired, my physique. It wasn't responding. It didn't have that sharp look that it always had in the past. And I realized that was the one mistake I made. After that, I never, ever took a year off where I didn't go completely off for at least 8 to 10 weeks. And you know what? Every single time I did it, I always came back better. And I can't stress enough that you need to take a couple steps back sometimes to take a leap forward. And John, I'm sure you are well aware of that, the science I just explained, and I'm sure you've seen it in yourself and other clients.
Absolutely. You know, we used to call it receptor burnout, when you're just not responding anymore. And and you're right. The only way to do that is to clean out. Make sure get your own loop, take the negative feedback loop off and get your own testosterone production working again, and reset, like you said, reset and clear out those androgen receptors. It's the only way to do it. For guys will keep taking more shit, so they don't really focus on that. But for women though, it's kind of disheartening when you got to tell a girl, okay, well, we did it on 50 milligrams of Primabol last time. Now you got to go to 75 because you're not responding. But maybe you should get off. Maybe you think, but people like to stay on. I don't understand the mentality. I mean, if you're on HRT, that's a completely different story. Your system's shot anyway. But if you're stacking on top of your HRT dose and you're stacking in a steroid or a couple of steroids on top of that, or even increasing just your HRT amount to like a higher amount, when you come back down, you still have to reset because you're still burning out those androgen receptors. Yep. So you got to clean out at some point, and I think 6 or 8 weeks, maybe even a little more, is a good idea.
Now, you know what a lot of people also don't realize is, and I know this sounds counterintuitive, crashing where your testosterone goes to I know guys that have had like a 12 testosterone level when 1,000 is it can be almost normal. 250 to 850 is normal.
Right.
Crashing off testosterone where your levels are almost zero is the best thing that can ever happen to you. I know people are petrified to go off because they're going to drop so low because they're going to lose their sex drive. It's actually the best thing that can happen to you because the lower your testosterone goes, the more sensitized your androgen receptors get. So actually, I mean, if you can deal with the mentally and you can deal with the fact that you might not have much of a sex drive, crashing and having nothing in your body, it might be the best thing that ever happened to you.
Sure.
When I went to jail, John, I unfortunately, I stopped taking everything I was on for 4 weeks before I went because I want my levels to go super low so they would put me on replacement when I was in jail, which is exactly what happened. And I literally I think I had a 20 testosterone for like 4 or 5, 6 weeks. And when I first got to jail, they wanted to make sure that I wasn't lying and that my levels were that low, so they didn't give me anything for the first 3 weeks. But so it was probably maybe a total of 8 weeks. I was very low, my testosterone. It kept going lower and lower. When they put me on replacement finally in jail, 1 shot a week, 200 milligrams of testosterone cypionate, I actually grew, eating tuna packets and crappy food and training in a horrendous, outside weight pit. Because my receptors were so sensitive after that I couldn't believe I was breaking out. I was like, holy mackerel, I feel like I'm on 1,000 milligrams of testosterone. And it just goes to show you need to reset those receptors. In addition to that, you need to clean out your body toxicity-wise too. You don't think that a synthetic hormone that's constantly being pumped into your body 365 days a year is not going to accumulate and cause toxin buildup? You're nuts if you think that. I'm telling you, guys, the biggest mistake people make out there is not going off and not cleaning out. The biggest one. Number one mistake.
Totally agree. I also want to mention something about low dose because maybe we can just debate this because I don't know if there's any science on it. If you have if you're taking 2,000 milligrams a week of test, you've completely saturated your system. All the receptors are taken up, and then you've got extra floating around. But on a low dose, a really low dose, like 200 milligrams, I don't think in some people you're going to saturate all the receptors. So you're actually getting more mileage out of that low dose because you're getting maximum use out of it. Yeah. So I noticed when I went on. Actually, you're the one who told me to go on replacement because my test levels were 120.
Yeah. And
I went on 250 mgs a week of SIP, and it was like unbelievable. I go, I'm getting more gains now than I got when I was on 1.5 grams a week.
Yep. Yeah. Absolutely. Now, also, it's important to mention the difference, John, between physiological doses of testosterone and pharmacological dosages. And to be honest with you, I never understood the difference. Well, I never even heard the term until I was in my 3rd year of college, believe it or not, and I was doing research on chicken muscle development with this professor, Dr. King, and we were giving the chickens different amounts of thyroid hormone, and that's when I first heard the term pharmacological versus physiological. And what it means is that a physiological dose of testosterone, which would give you a blood level of, like, say, up to maybe 850, will elicit a certain effect in the body. In other words, you'll build muscle and you'll recover in a certain way. When you start to up that dosage, or raise your blood levels of testosterone over 1,000, a week. That doesn't mean 1,000 milligrams of testosterone. I mean, where you're taking dosages that would raise your total testosterone over 1,000 a week, you create what's called a pharmacological effect in the body. Pharmacological and physiological effects are not the same. Okay, the pharmacological effect of testosterone at a high dose will cause super amounts of muscle to be built, well beyond what is physiologically ever possible. Okay, so you cannot compare what a physiological dose does with a pharmacological dose. When you take pharmacological amounts of steroids, that's high amounts of them, which causes this super hypertrophy to occur in the muscles, that's not natural in the body. That creates toxicity in the body. It creates stress on the system. It causes receptor downgrade that you don't get with physiological dosages. So you have to recover. That's why we call it post-cycle recovery or post-cycle therapy. You need to recover from that. You need to allow your body time to reset itself from that pharmacological effect for health purposes, for muscle building purposes, because we want to reset the receptors, and for toxin removal, because that's not a natural state that occurs in the body, and people know this. I have you ever run into this guy in the gym, John? These people that have the terrible breath, and it's not bad breath. It's like an internal odor that their body's toxic, and they're producing copious amounts of ammonia. That I've seen that in guys that are overdosing on steroids and who never go off. I've seen it in multiple people, and usually it means the liver is toxic. So you got to give your body time to release these toxins and get them out of the body. And it's important to understand that you want to be in a physiological range most of the time. The pharmacological effects of steroids, okay, are something that has to be cycled. And that's why steroids have always been cycled from their inception, from when Dr. What is his name? Seba, the guy who's the guy who made the Dianabol, the first guy?
Oh, the German dude. Seball or I don't remember.
It was
German.
It was an American guy, actually, because the Germans were using testosterone, and then an American chemist came up with Dianabol. I don't remember.
Yes, that's true.
And that was the first anabolic steroid. But they created them, and they knew that there was a difference between physiological and pharmacological dosages. So they said, look, if you want these things to work right, and you don't want to die from this stuff, you got to make sure they're cycled. And that's where the whole idea behind steroid cycling came from. They were having the Olympic athletes cycling the stuff, and it was legal. No one knew there was any performance enhancement. They actually were allowed to use the stuff at the time. Right? Isn't that crazy?
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
The good old days.
The other thing about the super pharmacological doses is that muscle is not muscle you're keeping. It's going away quick. And you mentioned the hard gain in the beginning of the show, or maybe we were off the air, but that's completely true. These guys that come out of nowhere, they're 22 years old and they're jacked up on everything, and their back looks like a pepperoni pizza, and they're enormous, and everybody goes, "Wow, this guy's huge. Where did he come from? I can't believe he's like 22 years old." And then what happens to him? Can't repeat. Can't come back. He looks like shit. What guy has ever come out at 22 years old? And I mean, other than maybe Sean Ray, but that was a completely different era. But who has come out at that young of an age with such a massive, 270, 280-pound guy and ever did anything with that?
Yeah,
it's never happened.
Except Cody Montgomery, but yeah.
How old is he?
He's 22.
Yeah, let's come back when he's 28 or 30.
Yeah. Well, you know what?
Like Trey Brewer. What happened to Trey Brewer?
Yeah, you're right. A lot of these guys burn themselves out, and they don't. The problem with teenagers and young guys is they don't have balance in their life to begin with. Then you throw the anabolics in there, which really throw them out of balance. And I think they're just not mature enough to handle it. And I think that's why it's a good idea that guys wait till they're older to use anabolics. I never took a steroid till I was, I think, 22 or 23. By luck. I'm not saying that I wouldn't have wanted to before that. I just didn't know anything about it, but it actually worked out better because I was more mature and able to handle the effects of them. So I think that young guys get caught up, and then they feel pressure to be better than they were before. Like you said, and before you know it, they're taking 5,000, 10,000 milligrams of stuff a week, and then they wind up in a hospital, and then they become completely disillusioned about the sport, and then they disappear. And that's a common theme. Very rarely do you get a guy who's mature enough to handle it at such a young age. Dallas McCarver being one of the guys that probably is one of the few guys that will make it to the Olympia stage at such a young age in today's world. But
I mean, Phil, Sean Ray, there's not too many of them.
Yeah, Phil wasn't that young either. Phil was older because remember he had already gotten out of college for playing basketball.
That's true. Sean was young.
Sean was, but you know what?
I'm trying to think of who else. There's not too many.
No, there are a couple out there, but by and far, you're right. Most guys that are that young, I mean, Branch Warren and Jay Cutler started as teenagers, and they were successful. But a lot of guys, I know guys that have just disappeared. There was a guy from New York, Paul Graffis, who was an unbelievable teen national bodybuilder, and he just disappeared off the face of the earth. He had a nervous breakdown. But the theme of the show is no cruising, no bridging, go off. Believe me, we do these shows because we want to educate you, not because we want to scream and yell, although we like doing that too. You got to go off the steroids to resensitize the androgen receptors, clean out the toxicity, and if you're in this for the long run, listen to this advice. It's probably the best advice you'll hear all year long. Maybe your whole life. I'm telling you.
Your whole life and blood work.
Yeah.
Blood work.
Well, you know what? The truth of the matter is, if you go off, you don't even need the blood work. But blood work is good because it gives us a baseline of where to proceed from to know what's going on. Guys ask me, you think I need to take a DHT blocker? I said, well, how high is your DHT? I don't know. Well, you got to get blood work. Same thing with estrogen.
Exactly.
I remember
Exactly.
I went to a doctor, this guy, Dr. Stricko. He's probably still in Queens or Brooklyn, wherever he was. The bodybuilders used to go to him. And I said to him, I said, can you give me a prescription for Nolvadex? There was no aromatase inhibitors back then. He goes, well, how high is your estrogen? I said, I don't know. He goes, well, why would you take an estrogen blocker if you don't have high estrogen? I said, I don't know, that's a good question. And he was right. How can I take an estrogen receptor blocker if
I got to back. Yeah, that's true to some extent, but there's definitely estrogenic effects that you can notice on your physique without having a blood test to say like, oh yeah. I mean,
his point though was you need data. You can't make decisions without data. And if you want to be the best bodybuilder you can be, and he taught me this, you got to have the data to back up what you're doing. You can't just fucking wing it because who knows if it's going to work or not, you know?
Exactly.
If you want to make informed decisions, okay, you got to have data. And blood work is the simplest data you can get out there. We did ask Dave before. Someone was asking me, if you don't have health insurance, can you get blood work anyplace cheap? And I said, yeah, actually you can. Lifeextension.com, you can go on there and get blood work. And they're pretty reasonable if you don't have the health insurance. But you know what? Everyone who's out there who's bodybuilding, if you don't have health insurance, you're freaking nuts. I got news for you. You tear a pec, ask Victor Martinez. He still doesn't have health insurance. He spent $30,000 on his patella tendon repair. He spent $30,000 on his broken femur bone, or not femur bone, his humerus bone that he broke in that stupid arm wrestling thing he did. And what else did he spend $30,000 on, John? Some other health issue he had. No, that was the tricep, the broken bone. But he had something else. He spent $30,000 on his lawyer to get him out of immigration jail. But that's another story.
You know what's insane about America is that you cannot walk into a lab and get your own blood work done.
I know. It's crazy, right?
You have to go. Listen to this. You know this. I'm just saying it for the people listening. What a ripoff this is. You got to make a doctor's appointment and see a doctor. That you got to pay for that. You got to ask your doctor to run the blood work. They won't always do it. If the doctor prescribes it to you, then you take the prescription and you go to the lab and you go again. You go there, you pay them. Then you got to go back to the doctor because the lab will not send you the results. They'll only send it to the doctor. Then you got to go pay another doctor visit to go see him to read you the blood test results. So that's right there is probably the reason why a lot of guys don't get their blood work done because it's too fucking hard.
Yeah. Well,
in the third world country, you can walk into any lab right off the street and there's a freaking menu on the wall, just like McDonald's, and you can order this panel, this panel, this panel, and it's like $100, and they email you the results within 3 days.
I love it. That's great.
Why can't America be like that?
And on that note, we're at the end of another episode of Iron Rage, brought to you by SciTech Nutrition. Visit SciTechNutrition.com and make sure to follow us on our RX Muscle Iron Road to the Olympia series that will be taking place these next 6 weeks leading up to the Olympia. For now, I'm Dave Palumbo with John Romano. We'll see you next time.